So in this reading vlog, I'm going to be reading books by some of my favourite authors, new releases, new 2025 releases. I should have led by saying that, but hopefully you will have seen from the title and the thumbnail. We're going to be reading 3 books by 3 authors that I would consider favourite authors within their respective genres, and they all have new releases that have come out in 2025 that I have been highly anticipating. I am hoping for some 5 stars in this vlog. I am also filming this in a new location. I don't know whether I should even acknowledge that, but I'm filming in my living room with my other bookshelves, which I don't often have in vlogs and stuff because this room is a little bit echoey and I can hear that it's echoey now that I'm filming, but hopefully it's not so awful that it's unlistenable. That was a tangent that I didn't need to go on, but I thought I would start this vlog by talking through my TBR and the books that I'm hoping to read. So first up, we have My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This is Fredrik Backman's newest release, hence why it's in this vlog. Fredrik Backman is the author of A Man Called Uwe, one of my favourite books of all time. I've also read Beartown by him, which was another 5 stars. My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologies was another 5 stars. I think the only book of his that I haven't given 5 stars is Anxious People, which I gave a 3, but I'm hoping that's an anomaly. I can't say that word. I'm hoping that's the exception to the rule, and I end up really enjoying My Friends. I've heard really good reviews so far. The second book that you're going to see me read is What We Do in the Dark by Kia Abdullah. I always get the name of that book wrong, but Kia Abdullah is one of my favourite thriller writers. I have read, I think, all of her published books, and I don't think I've given any of them below a 4 stars. I can't actually remember if I've given her a 5 stars. Maybe the second book in the Zara Khalil series. I think that might have been a 5 stars, but either way, she's a very consistent author for me, so the chances of me liking her newest release are pretty high. The third and final book that I'm going to be reading is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and this is the only book that I'm a little nervous about because Ali Hazelwood is not a consistent author for me. I do consider her one of my favourite romance authors, mostly because Love Theoretically and Check and Mate are 2 of my favourite romance books of all time, and I also gave 5 stars to The Love Hypothesis, but I think that was more like a 4.5. I don't think I've actually given any of her books 4 stars because I gave Not in Love 3 stars, and then Love on the Brain, I can't remember if I gave it 3 stars at the time or whether I just went ahead and gave it 2 stars, but it's a 2 stars in my memory. So I seem to either really love or really not get on with Ali Hazelwood's books, and I've heard mixed things about this one, so it'll be interesting to see what I think of it. That's everything for this intro, so I hope you enjoy this vlog, and yeah, we're gonna get stuck into it, and hopefully we will find a 5 stars in this reading vlog. I have made a start on the first book that I'm reading for this vlog, which is My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This is a very character-driven story, so I'm gonna try and summarise the plot, but just know the plot isn't really important. It's kind of there in order to develop the characters. So the main character, the first character that we're introduced to, is called Louisa. She is 17, turning 18, and for her whole life she has been obsessed with this painting. She grew up in foster care, and the only way that she's seen this painting is on a postcard until the start of the book when she breaks into a place where this painting is on display. Most people think this painting is just a painting of the sea. However, Louisa knows that it's actually a painting of this group of teenagers who are at the end of this pier. You have to look really closely in order to see them, but she has been fascinated by this painting for her whole life. You also get the perspective of the artist and how he painted this painting when he was a teenager, and it's about him and his friends, and it has that nostalgic feeling because you have this timeline 25 years in the past. To me, it doesn't feel rooted in any particular time period. Like, I'm assuming it's meant to be the year 2000, but it doesn't have pop culture references which really grounds it in any particular year. So I think that's really clever in a way, because you could read this if you're any age and maybe see yourself in this group of teenagers, although these teenagers have been through a lot. All of Fredrik Backman's books that I've read have felt sad, but this feels really sad, and I don't know whether it's because it's about children going through trauma. There's something about it that overall the tone just feels very melancholy. So I wanted to mention that just as a warning, because there's all kinds of trauma that these characters have been through. There's still the occasional funny moment to balance things out. So Louisa, basically you have this dynamic of a teenager and a guy who is approaching middle age, and some of their conversations have put a smile on my face. Fredrik Backman has a way with words, honestly. Like, he says things in such a simple way, but it really resonates with me and it really catches you off guard sometimes. He really understands humanity, and that's what I love about his writing. So this is going well so far. I think I'm approaching the halfway point, so I might just finish this and then let you know my final thoughts. But yeah, I have come close to crying several times. I did want to give another content warning actually, that part of this plot involves a character going through a terminal illness. There's other content warnings as well for things like child abuse, so just be aware of that. I don't know whether this is going to be my favourite book by him, but it does have potential to be 5 stars. I realised after I last spoke to you, I said that I was about halfway through My Friends by Fredrik Backman. That was a lie. I was actually only 40% of the way through, so I thought I would bring you another update. Now I'm 60% of the way through, and then I can give you my final thoughts at the end, obviously. I don't know why, but whenever I'm filming a reading vlog, if I check in with you at the halfway point, I feel like I need to wait until the end before giving you my final thoughts. Whereas if I check in at the 30 to 40% mark, then it makes more sense for me to do another check-in once I'm past the halfway point. This is just an insight into how my brain works, but I shouldn't think that way. I should just chat to you whenever I have something to say. And I am really liking My Friends. I was actually talking to my dad at the weekend about this because he's read quite a few Fredrik Backman books. I think the last book that he published, at least in English, because if you don't know, Fredrik Backman is a Swedish author. The last full-length novel that he came out with was, I think, Anxious People, and I know that I buddy read that with my dad because I bought him a copy and we read it around that time when he was visiting the UK, because he lives in the US, for anyone who doesn't know. I feel like I'm rambling and I should just get to the point, but the point is, I was talking to my dad about Fredrik Backman and we were both saying he has such a way with words. His prose, it's very simple and he uses these very short sentences, but he says so much through his words. He writes with a lot of empathy and compassion, and I love that. Nothing against authors who have a more descriptive writing style, but I think it is such a talent to be able to get across the themes and whatever you're trying to say. I think it's such a talent to be able to say that with as fewer words as possible. I think if you're looking to get into literary fiction, then it's definitely worth checking out his books because his writing is so accessible, in my opinion. I do understand why some people find his books boring because they don't really have a plot. However, I don't care. I love the way that he writes and how his books make me feel. He tends to write a lot about generational differences and the relationships between older people and younger people, you know, parents and children, or adults and teenagers, and I love that. I am really enjoying this book. I don't know whether it's going to be a new favourite, 5 stars. I might have said that in my last update, but I am very much enjoying what this is saying, and whenever I'm reading it, I'm absorbed in the story. I'm actually listening to the audiobook for this, which is a new experience for me because with his other books, I read them all either physically or on my Kindle. I don't know whether I would be enjoying this a little more if I was reading it physically because I do love his prose so much, but it's been a nice experience listening to his writing because it does tend to impact me emotionally. With a lot of his previous books, there's been something towards the end, either a reveal or a twist or just something intense and impactful that's happening that's made me change my view on the whole book. So I'll be really interested to see if that's the case with My Friends. I have now finished My Friends by Fredrik Backman and I'm going to give this a solid 4 stars. So it's not a new favourite book by this author. However, I did really like it. I would recommend it if you like books about found family or if you like sad books. The ending is more hopeful than the rest of the book. However, there were some certain things towards the end that felt, I don't know whether convenient is the wrong word, but there was one character in particular where I didn't like how things left off with that character. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to go into spoilers. There were some parts of the ending that I found a little underwhelming, and also Fredrik Backman does this thing which sometimes I like. He does this thing where he'll give you information and then he'll let you make an assumption based on that information. Then later on, he'll flip it around and say, haha, you made an assumption, and this is actually what happened. It sometimes works for me, but sometimes I get annoyed because I don't know what I can and can't trust. Sometimes I just want him to tell me directly what's happening, and sometimes I can't tell when he's gonna flip stuff around, and it just gets confusing. Well, not confusing because I'm following it, it just sometimes feels like a bit much. It just irritates me sometimes, and I think it was a little bit too much in this book. But yeah, 4 stars, definitely one that I will be recommending. I am going to be reading my next book soon. I'm not sure what book I'm going to be picking up next. I'm leaning towards reading Deep End by Ali Hazelwood physically, and then alongside that I need a new audiobook because I've obviously just finished my Friends on audio, so I'm going to be picking up What Happens in the Dark by Kia Abdullah. I feel like I've got the name of that wrong, but I will have put pictures of both books on the screen so you can see. I'm probably going to read these side by side, but I'll edit the vlog so that the updates are grouped together. And we're talking about one book at a time, otherwise I find it just really confusing in my brain. So over the weekend, I made a start on What Happens in the Dark by Kia Abdullah. I am currently 34% of the way through, so around about a third, which is a good place to pause and tell you my initial thoughts so far. I really like the audiobook for this. It's narrated by Tanya Rodriguez, who I think narrates Kia Abdullah's other books. The story is really easy to follow via audio, and yeah, it's mostly been set up so far. We're following these 2 women who are in their mid-30s. However, when they were kids, they were the best of friends. They grew up on this council estate in East London. One girl in particular had quite a difficult childhood because her mom was an alcoholic. As they grew up, they did start to drift apart though. One girl went to Oxford Uni. She met this guy who comes from a rich family and they got married, and she ended up becoming a breakfast TV presenter, whereas the other woman is a local journalist. So they both studied journalism, but their lives have gone in different directions and they haven't really been in contact over the last few years. I do want to give a big content warning for domestic violence. That is kind of forming the main bulk of the plot. One of these women is accused of murder and that's what sparks the plot. Yeah, it's interesting so far because we have had all of this setup, and the part that I was at yesterday, it's difficult to explain, but I feel like Kia Abdullah quite often tackles difficult and sensitive topics in her books, and it always makes me a little bit nervous. This has never been the case in any of her previous books, but it always makes me nervous when an author does this in a thriller. I want those topics to be handled sensitively and with care, and I'm sure it's going to be fine, but just some of the stuff that's been hinted at, it's put me on edge. So going to keep an eye on that. I think I'm next going to check in with you when I'm past the halfway point. I think the point that I'm at now, we're going to start getting into the court case, which I'm really excited about. One of my main critiques with Kia Abdullah's previous book is that it took forever to get to the court case, and my favourite thing about her books is the way that she writes these really dynamic and engaging courtroom scenes. So hopefully we're getting to that point soon and I can check in with you once I have more to say. I am attempting to film this vlog update for a second time because when I filmed it earlier, I don't know what it is about this room. For some reason in the mornings, I think it's because of the way the light is coming into the room, but my face always looks really sweaty, way more than it feels. I just imported the footage from this clip that I filmed earlier and I've got a really sweaty upper lip and it's distracting. Like, I don't care what I look like, especially like when I'm filming vlogs if I'm working from home. I don't really care that much, but if it's distracting, then I don't want to put it in a vlog because people are going to be looking at my face instead of listening to what I'm talking about. Obviously they're going to be looking at my face because I'm putting my face out there on the internet, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't want my appearance to be distracting, so I'm attempting to film this update again. What am I doing? So this evening, me and my partner are hopefully going out. We're going to this pop-up at this restaurant, which is actually one of my favourite brunch restaurants. They're not usually open that late, but this evening they're doing a pop-up. They've got a food van doing cheese toasties, which I'm really excited about. So that is this evening, and then I'm off work tomorrow. I'm going to a Steve Kavanagh event in Birmingham, and it's not until the evening. I think the event starts at like 6:30, but because it's a Friday and because I would have had to have finished work early anyway in order to get there in time, I thought I might as well just book the day off and just take myself out for the day. So I'm going to go into Birmingham tomorrow afternoon, mooch around, maybe do a little bit of book shopping, book window shopping, because I'm trying not to buy books, at least physical books at the moment, and then I'll get myself some lunch and stuff before the event. So that is the plan for the next few days. I have also been making some really good progress with What Happens in the Dark. I always think I'm getting the name of that book wrong. I keep thinking that I'm getting it confused with the Jennifer Hillier book, but I'm pretty sure it's What Happens in the Dark. I'm about 70% of the way through. I think I'm over 70% of the way through. I've got about 3 hours left on the audiobook, so I don't know if I'm going to finish it today. Feeling really invested in this at the moment. However, I also feel like I'm being gaslit. The first section introduces you to the characters and it doesn't show the crime happening. Like, you know that someone is on trial for murder. That's actually, it tells you in the synopsis. You don't see it happen, but you do see the events leading up to that and you get to know the characters. So it feels very clear-cut and obvious what's happened, but then as you'll see in the court case unfold, you're getting all of this new information that's casting a shadow of doubt on everything, and it's making me question stuff and I don't like it. I'm very curious to see how this is going to wrap up because I do have trust in Kia Abdullah. I think she's going to handle things in a sensitive way. There's a lot of social commentary in this. There's a side plot that's happening alongside this court case, which I'm not going to talk about because it's not mentioned in the synopsis, but this is very much a book that it's making me feel angry. It's a book about how abusers rely on their victims to be too ashamed or embarrassed to come forward, and yeah, it's very rage-inducing, but I'm very curious to see, yeah, how it's going to wrap up. It's the kind of book where I can see some people having the complaint that it's too on the nose. I very rarely have that complaint about books because if an author has a certain message or a certain theme that they want to explore and they want to tell me what they're trying to say through their book, then I don't have an issue with that. So I'm not finding it too on the nose, but I very rarely have that problem anyway. I can just tell with certain things it's being quite blunt and direct, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's just something that I wanted to mention. We'll let you know once I finish this, but so far it's feeling like a solid 4 stars. Hi everyone, happy Saturday. I have quite a busy YouTube day planned for today. I filmed a video yesterday before I went into Birmingham that I have edited and I've uploaded it, but I still need to sort the thumbnail and the subtitles and all of that stuff. So that is on the list for this afternoon. Me and my partner are also finally going to be filming the Malazan discussion video that we've been talking about doing for a while. So lots planned. I would also at some point like to get some reading in this afternoon. I finished What Happens in the Dark by Kia Abdullah on my way home yesterday. The event was really fun, by the way. Steve Kavanagh is so funny. It was really interesting hearing him talk about his publishing journey as well. I didn't realise the first 3 Eddie Flynn books, apparently they didn't sell very well. They were critically acclaimed and he won all kinds of awards, but it wasn't until after 50/50 came out, I think he was able to go full time with his writing because he was a lawyer before then. So it was a really nice event. I got home quite late though, so I'm a little bit tired this morning, but I'm gonna power through because yeah, I have a lot that I need to do. In terms of my final thoughts on what happens in the dark, I don't know what I'm going to rate this because I have really mixed feelings on the end. I feel like this was setting things up to be a series or for there to be a sequel. I don't know if I've got that wrong, but there was something quite important that wasn't really resolved and I was a little bit confused about that. I think with books like this where it's very clear that the author is trying to get across a certain message, I don't really like it when it seems to suddenly pivot. And looking back, I can see how the author was maybe laying the groundwork for the direction that this book went in. But I don't think it really pulled it off in a way that felt satisfying to me. Like, I didn't see the ending coming. I understood what it was trying to say, but yeah, just in terms of like my enjoyment of the book, maybe enjoyment is the wrong word, but just in terms of my appreciation for the book as a whole, it kind of dipped towards the end, but I feel like that's more of a me thing. I feel like there was a certain element that was shoehorned in. I don't feel like it was explored in as much depth as I would have liked. So yeah, I don't know whether I'm going to give this like a 3.5 or a 4 because I did enjoy most of it and I think it's one that was worth reading. It was just the ending. I had so many mixed feelings on it. Not any favourite, but it was an okay read. So we're going to move swiftly on to the next book that I have started, which is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I think I said I was going to be starting this and I intended to check in with you sooner, but I've only just got a third of the way through. I'm reading this so slowly and that's not usually the case with romance books in general, but also with Ali Hazelwood's books. I tend to read her writing very quickly, but this week has just been very bitty. There's been lots going on and yeah, I've just not had as much time to really read. So I finally got a third of the way through. I am enjoying the plot, but I'm not that invested in the romance. So if you don't know, this is following a woman called Scarlett. She is in college. She's a student athlete. She's on the diving team. At the beginning of the book, she overhears her captain talking about some issues that she's having in her relationship. So her captain, Penelope, I think is her name, has been dating this guy Luke for like a decade. Maybe not quite a decade, but a really long time. And they're having some issues where they're incompatible in the bedroom. Turns out that Scarlett actually has some similar interests, kinky interests to this guy. The setup feels messy and I understand it's a college romance, so maybe that should have been my expectation, but it's a romance between Scarlett and this guy Luke. It just feels a bit uncomfortable the way that Penelope, the ex-girlfriend, is kind of encouraging it, and also not many people know that Penelope and Luke have broken up. So I'm nervous that there's going to be some kind of miscommunication with other characters later on in the book. I'm very interested in the diving aspect and Scarlett's personal journey because she had an accident, I think over a year ago, that she's fully recovered from physically, but mentally she's struggling. So she's going to therapy for that, and there's certain dives that she's hesitant to do because it was the dive that caused her injury, and all of that side stuff, as well as she is wanting to become a doctor, so she's doing this research project as part of that. All of the plot outside of the romance I'm enjoying. I'm just not really feeling the chemistry between the characters right now, but that could come, you know. I'm only a third of the way through. This is also quite a long book. When I was looking, I think it's over 400 pages, so maybe that's also why I feel like I'm dragging my heels with it a little bit, but I'm gonna hopefully have time to read some more of this over the weekend, and I'll let you know how I'm finding it once I'm past the halfway point. Good morning, happy Sunday. I have been having a cozy reading morning. I've made it past the 60% mark in Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and I'm liking this a little more than I was. However, I think it's everything but the romance that I'm enjoying. I'm feeling more tension when Scarlett is stood on the diving platform about to do a dive compared to when her and Lucas are about to get it on. I think think this relationship is just not my personal preference. I was so confused when this came out. I saw some mixed reviews. I saw some people saying that this is too spicy, and I saw some people saying it wasn't spicy enough, and I was so confused how both could be true. Now that I'm reading it, I can understand why, because the basis for their relationship, it's based on this agreement that they make, this friends with benefits type situation, and that's, again, not my preference. I prefer a slower burn. I want to see the characters build a deeper emotional connection before any of the spice starts happening. The spicy scenes themselves are focused on this dynamic between them, this power dynamic, where Lucas wants to be in control and Scarlett doesn't. Maybe because this is a traditionally published romance, it's playing it a little safe. I don't mind that because this is just not my personal preference in romance, but I don't think it's badly written. I do like the scenes or the parts where Scarlett and Lucas are sharing details about their past and you're seeing that emotional connection grow. I think this is just, it's not going to be a 5 stars, let's put it that way. I'm going to try and finish it today. According to my Kindle, I have about 2 hours and 45 minutes left. This feels way too long. I think it is over 400 pages. I might have said that already. And I do feel like it's dragging quite a lot, but because I'm liking the plot outside of the romance, I am enjoying it. It's not like it's a chore to read. I have now finished Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and I think I'm going to settle on a 3 stars for this. I liked the plot. It was enjoyable, but when it came to the romance, I felt so neutral about everything. It just wasn't for me. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't really like it, so 3 stars feels about right. I also hated the third act conflict. It really irritated me because even though miscommunication is realistic, I don't enjoy reading it. There's certain situations where I can overlook it, but when it seems really obvious to me that a situation could be avoided by characters actually talking to one another, it just really gets on my nerves. Certain characters in this just really annoyed me, and there was one part actually which I don't really know how to talk about this, but the 2 main characters were having a conversation that was quite heated, and then it turned into a smut scene and made me feel a little uncomfortable. Just the dynamic between the main characters just wasn't for me, but it will be for other people, so I can understand why some people would like this. It's not my favourite Ali Hazelwood book. I think in terms of where I would rank it, I would probably put it somewhere in the middle. So yeah, a little disappointing, but also based on the reviews for this, I had a feeling that it probably wasn't going to be for me. I would compare this mostly to Not in Love, which was Ali Hazelwood's romance that came out last year. Both of them, I feel, prioritise the physical relationship between the 2 main characters before the deeper feelings begin. And again, that's just not my preference in romance. So yeah, not the best way to be ending this reading vlog, but I did have 2 4-star reads. I think My Friends was definitely a 4 stars, and then What We Do in the Dark, I think I would give a 4, but more like a 3.5. And then obviously Deep End was a 3. So it didn't quite go as well as I was wanting, considering these are some of my favourite authors, but maybe it's just 2025 new releases. I've read quite a lot of new releases this year, and I need to look into my reading stats actually and see how many of them I've actually enjoyed. I know I've given at least 2 of the new releases that I've read 5 stars, but I can't remember about the others. I know that last year was not a good year, so it'll be interesting to see whether things have changed, but I'm going to stop rambling and wrap up this vlog. Thanks again for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, or let me know if you've read any books by any of these authors and whether they are favourite authors for you as well. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.